Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Uncle Matt here live on a Friday night. These Friday night live streams are seeming to become a tradition now. I think I've done this like 3 weeks in a row now on Friday nights, but tonight's is a big one because tomorrow we have Nashville SC finally returning to the pitch for the Men in Black match, the start of the MLS season. Nashville SC versus NYCFC SC. They have too many C's in their name. Big match starting off the season, the first match of the MLS season. Nashville SC gets the privilege of being the team that kicks it off. First team of the 2023 season to take the field at home. First team to be featured on the new Apple TV Plus system setup. Also, the first, it's going to be on Fox too, but still, huge match, huge opportunity for Nashville SC to be in the showcase, to be on the big stage, big debut match for the team. And tonight we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the team. We're going to talk about what my expectations, what my thoughts are heading into the 2023 season. What is Nashville SC ultimately going to do on the field this season? That's what we're here to do. But before we get to the 2023 season itself, what we're going to see on the field, I do want to address some of the off the field stuff, some of the build up to the season stuff, because it's just been too loud, too, vocal, too big in the fan supporter community to not at least address some of the issues that have been causing friction, shall we say, in the community. So there's three main areas that I think have kind of popped up this off season slash preseason, maybe four. Three, maybe four. There's probably ones that I'm even forgetting at this point in time. But I think the first one that kind of I'll address that popped up, and I'll get into this more probably with the actual season preview, but I think the fan base was a little unsettled coming into the season based on the lack of transfer activity the club has made since the end of the 2022 season. Fafa Picoult being the one significant addition, uh, Dave Romney being a somewhat significant subtraction. And obviously the Ake Loba of it all is there, but I think there was moves, there was some stuff that the fan base wanted to see the club do in terms of reinforcing the squad that has not happened yet, that has kind of unsettled the fan base, that has kind of upset the fan base. I think justifiably so, because this feels like a team that is very close to being able to get over the hump to being a true contender in the MLS, and just has not done the extra push to get a couple extra players in that maybe would have helped that. So I can understand the frustration there. But I'm going to be honest, I don't understand the MLS salary cap structure, the machinations of how transfers and stuff works enough to be able to fully say what the club could have done this offseason. Because obviously, the big hang up there is the Ake Loba taking up a designated player spot while he is now currently on loan to a club in Liga MX. So we've got a designated player spot that's being taken up by a player who's not playing for us. I understand from a certain perspective it probably was hard to unload him based on his performances since coming to Nashville SC. So, it probably loaning him out and, giving him the chance to up his transfer value is probably the only slash best case scenario. I know there's ways you can buy out your designated players in MLS, but once again, I'm not familiar enough with all the weird GAM, TAM, international slots, U22 initiatives. Not familiar enough with those elements of the MLS salary cap roster build structure to fully understand what else could have been done with Ake Loba. But I mean, I honestly, I can understand the club. They spent a lot of money on him, and I can understand them not just wanting to just find a way to get him off the books and waste more money off him. So like loaning him to Liga MX where he had previously been successful, letting him build up his value and hopefully convince the team that he's with to eventually purchase him outright is probably the best case scenario, I would guess. But it certainly has led to frustration that we aren't able to get that top level striker in that we probably need because he's taking up a DP spot because, you know, whatever, there weren't other options or other ways to make that happen. I don't know. I'll get more into that once we get into the actual season preview, the actual team preview, looking at the actual roster. But I think that was kind of the initial thing that has been frustrating the fan base this offseason has been the lack of uh, addition to the team. You know, obviously it's a very solid team, playoffs 3 straight years, a couple playoff wins under our belt, you know, third in the Eastern Conference 2 years ago. So it's a squad that has had success, but it's a squad that feels like it definitely needs a little extra something to take the next step forward, and that hasn't happened. So can understand the frustration from the fan base on that perspective. The second thing I think that set off the fan base recently, and I'm not going to try to be too negative on this stuff because, like, I think some of this has been blown out of proportion, and I don't want to necessarily, like, feel like I'm attacking my fellow supporters. I don't necessarily want to feel like I'm attacking the club, even. But I think there's definitely been some stuff that's been blown out of proportion. So, rewind about 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, uh, we got the first kind of teases, the first kind of announcements that the new jersey, the Man in Black kit that we went and purchased. You can go back and watch that vlog. Was on its way from being released, and season ticket members got emailed the opportunity to pre-order it to make sure they were able to secure their jersey, secure their size, make sure they got it when it was released. It was all kind of weird because it was like the email was like, you're gonna have to purchase the jersey sight unseen, which it had leaked months earlier, so everybody pretty much knew it was the Johnny Cash Man in Black jersey. I'm assuming there's something with MLS and Adidas where they wanted to roll out. We saw the way they rolled out all the jerseys within a 2 day period. So I'm sure there was something where the club wanted to give season ticket members, the most dedicated fans, the opportunity to secure their jersey. But because of the way MLS and Adidas planned the rollouts of the jersey, they couldn't, they couldn't show it to you until they were allowed to show it to you. And so, like, they didn't want to just, like, a day before the release party, like, try to do it then. So I think they were trying to do the right thing, but it came off kind of weird with like the secretiveness of like you got to buy it sight unseen. But what happened was because it was a pre-sale, because only our jerseys were the only jerseys we could see. A lot of fans got upset about the price of it because the jerseys this year went up by a 20 or $40. I don't remember the exact number. They went up like a noticeable amount, and I think when fans saw it at first, they immediately like were way too quick to jump in and blame Nashville SC. There was actually people tweeting at Nashville SC, calling out Nashville SC, like, how are you going to charge, $200 for this jersey, blah, 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 blah. And right from the get-go, I was like, this isn't a Nashville SC thing. Adidas has the contract across the board with MLS. Every team is MLS Adidas jerseys. This is a league slash Adidas, thing. The price, it's not Nashville SC didn't go, these Man in Black kits look pretty good. Let's charge $200 for them. That was a Adidas MLS thing, and because we only saw our price initially, I can understand like how some people reacted that way. But as soon as the other jerseys from all the other teams got released, you could see across the board it was the standard price across the board for each team. It wasn't just Nashville SC price gouged their jerseys. It was every team, every new jersey was the same price across the board. So it was an Adidas, was an MLS thing. The questions can always be asked. Could, Nashville SC do more? Could Nashville SC ask, hey, can we charge less for our jersey? Sure, but I don't know what exactly power they have in that type of negotiation. So that was the second one that kind of set people off. And then weirdly, I saw some people that were like upset about where the jersey release party was held. It was held uh, at the Walk of Fame Park, which is this little green space right next to Bridgestone Arena, which is the home of the Nashville Predators. It's the big arena here in Nashville where like concerts, events, stuff like that always happens. There's people complaining that like the club hosted an event there and was like, oh, it costs so much to park downtown, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, does parking downtown suck? Yeah, yeah, but there's plenty of places to park downtown. Like I don't. Parking has become such a huge issue with this team, and I don't understand like I almost feel like the people who are complaining about the parking like aren't from Nashville or have never been to sporting events, don't know how to like because I went to the jersey release event and paid $10 to park. So if you paid $40 to park to go to the jersey release event, do your research. Figure it out. There's places to park in downtown Nashville that do not cost $40. It was a little bit complicated because there was a Preds game going on at the same time, which probably jacked up some lots and it caused a little bit more traffic and congestion in downtown Nashville than otherwise. But like the same people who complain that like Nashville SC doesn't do enough for the fans, doesn't do enough events, doesn't do enough to promote the team. Also, we're complaining. Well, you did this in the middle of downtown Nashville and it cost $40 a park. So it's like you just can't complain about everything. You have to figure out ways to make these things work. And Nashville SC, I think, in a lot of ways, is trying to do that, but the fans just want everything. I'm trying not to rant. I'm trying not to rant, and I'm trying not to go negative on our fan base. But there's definitely members of our fan base that want everything handed to them on a silver platter. Breath. Let's take a breath. Let's get off that negative train. The Man in Black release party was an awesome event. Like I said, I was able to park downtown in downtown Nashville for $10. It's something you can do if you're able to do a little research and figure out where the best places to park are. And if you can walk a little bit. There's a whole issue of like parking for the disabled. I can't get into that because that's not something I'm a part of, and I don't really know what that situation is. I know I have friends and family that have been able to get access to disability parking. Now we're going into the stadium situation, but at the stadium, I know I have friends and family who have been able to get access to disability parking by contacting the team directly, by calling them on the phone, by letting them know their situation. Is that something that everybody's able to do? Probably not, because parking is limited at the stadium. I don't want to get the parking at the stadium yet. We're going to get there. We're coming. We're going back to the release party thing. Release party was awesome. It was great. I don't know where the better option would have been to hold something like that, because if you want to do a big scale like festival with like concert bands playing, special guest celebrities and stuff like that, like everything they put on for that, there's not that many places you could put that you're not going to have to pay to park in Nashville. You want to go to like a park in Mount Juliet or something like that, and let everybody park for free. Yeah, have at it. But I mean, that's not Nashville. But Nashville is Nashville. I mean, I don't know how else to explain that. Like, it's breathe, breathe, breathe. I'm gonna look at the comments. I've got a couple comments here that I want to address. So this is gonna be a break to not get overly agitated and upset about things that have annoyed me the last few days. Got NSC yo. We got they just changed the MLS buyout rules today. Can now during the season now. I did see something about that. Once again, like a lot of this just goes over my head when I'm trying to read and trying to understand it. But I did see a lot of people saying they believe there's a new amendment to the way you can buy out a designated player's contract, and that looked like it was a loophole that was maybe being put in place to give a certain team down in Florida the chance to sign Messi and very quickly get his insane contract off the books and maybe pay him more than what you could normally even pay a designated player by buying him out and then giving him more money. So I definitely saw that today. I didn't fully understand it, but I definitely saw that. Good comment by Richard Greenberg there. Looking forward to the Nashville SC game day videos. We're going to be there tomorrow. We're going to record the whole thing. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be fun. I'm very excited. I should have said this from the get-go. I don't know if I did or not, but I'm very excited for the game tomorrow just because I'm ready to see real soccer be played on the field by the boys in gold, aka now the boys in black, because some of the negativity that's been popping up over the last 2 weeks, I just want to wash it away. I want it to be gone. I want to see the guys back on the field playing. I want to score goals tomorrow. I want to have celebrations. I want Geodis Park to be popping, and I don't want to think about all these things that have like created some negativity around the club. So definitely excited for that. Mini Biloxi fan, who do you think is the second best team? It's hard to say. MLS is so hard to predict. Like, it's so much different than like European soccer, where you kind of know who the top teams are going to be. I think Philadelphia and LAFC still look like they're probably the two best teams on paper this season. Um, there's a lot of teams that have improved a lot that could come up and knock on the door of those two teams, and you never know when a team's just going to have a complete fall off. Like, New England was the best team in the league like 2 years ago and just went in the tank last year out of nowhere, kind of because of injuries and other things. But it's hard to predict MLS, and that's one of the things I think makes MLS fun is like the parity, the fact that like anybody can win the league any season. Well, not anybody can win the league any season, but it's a lot more open than like European soccer, where Spain, there's probably two teams, maybe three, that can, like, Atletico can sneak in there every once in a while and challenge Barcelona and Real Madrid. Germany, Dortmund, knocked on the door at Bayern, and then Bayern like slapped him down. Now Bayern's won like 10 straight titles. Juventus had this long crazy run in Italy, but now like Napoli and Inter and even Milan have kind of risen back up, but still that's only like 3 4 teams. With the playoff structure that MLS has, like if you can get in the playoffs, you can win. That's one thing, and I'll get into this in a second a little bit more, but one of the things I've always kind of thought that I liked about Gary Smith as a coach is his style isn't the most beautiful soccer in the world. Being a little bit more defensive, a little bit more trying to counter attack, a little bit more keep clean sheets and then counterattack and take opportunities when they come. It's not the most beautiful soccer in the world. It's not the most exciting soccer in the world. But when you win your championship by a playoff, if you keep the other team from scoring, you're going to win every game, unless you lose your penalty shootout like we did against Philadelphia like 2 years ago. But with the playoff structure of MLS, defense, as is in the case, or as the old saying in American sports, wins championships. So it's not the most fun, it's not the most exciting. But if things go your way, if you're able to execute the game plan, it's the way you can win championships. But we'll see. I'll get into that more. We're gonna get to that in a second with the actual season preview there. Making any MLS future bets? No, I'm honestly not, because like I said, it's so hard to predict what's going to happen in MLS. Like if I was going to put anything on anybody, it'd be either LAFC or Philadelphia. Philadelphia maybe the most would be my best bet for a preseason pick for who's going to win MLS Cup, just because I we played them in the very first game at Geodis Park. I've got the poster here from the debut game at Geodis Park last year against Philadelphia Union, and they were the best team I saw us play last year. Like I wasn't that impressed by LAFC when they came to Geodis Park. We got to see Gareth Bale's MLS debut in that match. But Philadelphia Union looked like the most complete team. Their goalkeeper, Andre Blake, to me is the best goalkeeper in MLS. And once again, like I said, like if you can play defense in MLS, that goes a lot further than maybe any other league in the world, just because playoffs, if you keep a 0-0, even if you're 0-0, you're going to go to a shootout. And if you can win the shootout, you can go forward. You don't have to win games to win the championship in MLS. It's crazy to say, but because of the playoffs, you could literally win 0 games in the MLS Cup playoffs, and you could win the MLS Cup, because if you just go 0-0 every time, win all your kicks from the mark, you're going to win the championship. So I thought Philadelphia was, to me, the best team I saw come to Geodis Park last year. They look like they're going to be, just as strong, if not stronger, this season. So if I was going to place a future bet, it would be on Philadelphia. But like MLS is so unpredictable. I don't, in the odds, like I haven't even looked at the odds. So I don't know if like that's like even like what the differential is between different teams to place on. But yeah, but Philadelphia would be my initial thought preseason pick to win the championship. So the jersey thing, it was what it was. I think we've now seen that's kind of calmed down now. Everybody's still rightfully upset because the jerseys are too expensive. But I think people now know it's not the club that set that price. It's a bigger thing. We've also seen in the time since then that Adidas and MLS announced that they had renewed their contract to extend the agreement that Adidas will continue to be the exclusive kit manufacturer for MLS through, I believe, 2025, maybe 2026. So that certainly leads to maybe why the kits were so much better this year. Like I did a ranking where I was like, every single kit was awesome. And maybe that was like Adidas's push to make sure they kept the contract. There were some people who think maybe it had to do with Apple TV, the whole Apple TV deal, like getting more vibrant, better looking kits for the first year on Apple TV. I think it's a little bit of everything probably there, but that agreement has been extended, so you can kind of understand, Adidas just paid all this money to keep the contract. Jerseys went up in price. They're too expensive. No doubt about that. Not going to argue that every day, but like, I think there was people in our fan group that were too quick to attack the club and be like, oh my God, you guys are charging us so much for jerseys, and it wasn't a club thing. Now, once again, next thing I'm going to move into, this is a very localized issue. So if you're somebody who's watching from outside of like the Nashville area, who's just like wanting to know more about what's going on in Nashville SC, this is a very localized issue, and it's kind of been a running issue going back to last season. And it's the one thing I want to talk about the least, but I have to address it because it has been an issue. I can't not talk about the team without talking about this, and that's the parking situation at Geodis Park. I think by and large, and I've said this on Twitter, I've said this in past videos, people have made a much bigger deal out of it than what it actually is. There's plenty of parking in the area of Geodis Park. Is there on-site parking? No, but to me, that's not that uncommon for professional sports in America, especially like now where teams are. Have said this several times, but the Atlanta Braves new stadium they built in Battery, the Battery, the whole thing, SunTrust Park, Truist Park, I think it is now called, is in a lot of ways what I've heard multiple people from within like sports say that's kind of the model of what everybody wants to do now with their new stadiums is not just build a stadium but build a whole little entertainment complex where people will go and spend their whole day there, not just go to the game and go home or go to the game and go somewhere else. It's what the Titans are trying to do with building their new stadium. And part of that is if you want to build restaurants, bars, venues, all kinds of stuff around the stadium, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for like on site parking. I think people have like really got stuck on the fact that it came out last year that there was only 5,000 parking spots on site at Geodis Park. And everybody's like, well, there's 5,000 parking spots and it's a 30,000 seat stadium? That's insane. How's that supposed to work? Blah, 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 blah. The Titan Stadium seats 68,000, and I believe I've literally tried to find the number because I wanted to like figure this out for myself, but I haven't been able to find the number of how many like on-site parking spots there are at Nissan Stadium, the Titan Stadium. But I would guesstimate it's not more than 20,000. So somewhat percentage-wise a little bit comparable to what you're seeing at Geodis Park. Now the problem with Geodis Park's parking, and I will acknowledge this, is that it always changes. It's not those 5,000 spots aren't always available. We got an email 2 weeks ago that outside of people who have club memberships, there would not be any season long options. You couldn't buy a season parking pass. You had to buy it game by game by game. And I think the club had to do that because last season they sold season parking passes and then the parking situation kept changing. There kept being different availability week to week to week. So they probably had to refund people, give people who bought a season pass different options. Probably caused a bigger headache for the club than just saying, hey, this sucks, but we're only going to sell the tickets week to week. And once again, people lashed out at the club. People got mad at the club about the parking situation. But if you're familiar with the situation we have here in Nashville, with the situation that led to the building of the stadium, it has been built on the property of the Nashville Fairgrounds. This was a thing that like we all went to council meetings. We all went to Nashville Fairgrounds board meetings to fight for that spot. For whatever reason, the hierarchy of the potential club, the supporters groups, everybody just zeroed in that the fairgrounds was the be all end all. It was the only spot that would possibly work for the stadium. I knew from the get go that that was going to lead to infrastructural problems because, like, if you ever went to the Nashville Fairgrounds prior to the stadium being built, when it was just hosting things like flea markets and comic cons and gun shows and stuff like that, there was already hard to find parking for that kind of stuff. So if you're going to drop a 30,000 seat stadium into the middle of that, it's not going to be easy. Now there's things being done to alleviate that. There's a parking garage being built adjacent to the stadium. I'm pretty sure. Like I'm like 90% sure this building that's going up is a parking garage. It looks just like a parking garage. I don't have any kind of official confirmation that it's a parking garage, but I know that was always kind of part of the plan was there was going to be a parking garage somewhere in the vicinity of the stadium. Should it have been built in conjunction and been ready with the stadium last season? Probably, but just the nature of any construction project, there's going to be delays, there's going to be price overruns, there's going to have to be things that are going to be cut or delayed. I'm a huge Disney Parks fan, and it took them 5 years to build a roller coaster because of construction delays, budget issues. They are just now in the process of opening this Tron roller coaster that they've been trying to build for 5 years. So I think somewhere along the way, whether it was budget issues, whether it was timing issues, the club prioritized getting the stadium done first, getting the stadium built, and they kind of, because like you could kind of see like some of the stuff that was going on around the stadium, like the infrastructure construction, kind of stopped last year, and it was like hard press. Let's get the stadium built. Let's get the stadium done. That's the most important thing. We'll figure out the rest of it later. And now they're kind of catching up on that because the parking garage has gone vertical. It looks like it's not necessarily close to being done, but it's not far off from being done. We've got three major concerts that are coming to Geodis Park this year. We've got Pink, Shania Twain, and the most recently announced one for August is Guns N' Roses. I would be shocked if that parking garage is not open by the time of those three concerts, because those are three things where if the parking issues are still happening, those are going to be major disasters. Because with the soccer games, I would say, 10 to 15,000 of the people that go to the game are people that go to every single game or go pretty regularly. So you get used to the situation, you find your alternative options, you know what to do. I have my parking situation figured out. Like, I don't have any issues with parking at Geos Park because I figured it out very early on what I could do to park and not have any problems. Other people struggle with that, understandably, because, and this is where I'll once again say we shouldn't blame the club so much, because the fairgrounds controls the parking. It's not Nashville SC. The fairgrounds, board, uh, executives, whoever you want to, name, they're the ones who control the parking. I tweeted this out as a conspiracy theory, so to say, but I believe this to be the truth. There's people in power at the Nashville Fairgrounds who never wanted the soccer stadium built there. And so they're not going to be quick to do anything to help the soccer stadium. So if there's, a situation where the soccer team wants extra parking spots or wants access to more parking, there's people who are in power at the fairgrounds who are just like, sorry about your luck. So the issue this week is the fairgrounds or the flea market's going on this week, and the secondary issue is we're supposed to get some rain overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. And so there's a big field space that sometimes is used for parking that they're not going to allow people to park on tomorrow because obviously if it gets wet, if it gets soggy, you don't want cars driving on it and tearing it up. So, whatever. If the club was in control of that spot, they probably would let it happen. But it's a fairgrounds decision. The fairgrounds are the ones who are pulling the parking week to week to week, causing the issue for the club. If there's an issue the club has with the parking situation, it's that they're not transparent enough of the situation. They're not quick enough to announce the issues. They're not quick enough to, like, the announcement that there was not going to be any additional parking sold for this debut game Saturday came yesterday in an email at about 10 o'clock yesterday morning. So that was not timely enough, and maybe the club was fighting tooth and nail to try to get the fairgrounds to budge a little bit on the parking and just was holding off as long as they could. We don't know, because once again, if there's an issue with what the club's doing here, it's that they're not being transparent enough and like letting us know why these things are happening. So I'm completely, knowing the whole situation, I completely think the fairgrounds is the one to blame for pulling parking, for restricting what parking is available. I would hope the club is fighting as much as it can to push back on that, and maybe they're just not successful. But we don't know because we don't have any kind of inside information. We just get an email Thursday 10 o'clock that says, hey, due to inclement weather and other events going on at the fairgrounds, there will be no additional parking. Which, once again, I never park on site and I have no issue. I'll go back to, I think if there are people with disabilities who need to be closer to the stadium, who can't make the walk from the adjacent areas where parking's available, that's a problem. I would encourage those people to contact the club, because I have heard from people I know who have reached out to the club in those situations and have been given accommodations. So if you're not able to get accommodations from the club, if they're not helping you out in that regard, that sucks, and that's one issue they need to fix. But from what I have heard from people I know, that is something you can call the team, call Geos Park, or I don't even know what the phone number would be, but there's reach out to the club. They can help you in those situations sometimes. Breathe for a moment. Let's do some comments. I got a ton of comments rolling in. I want to jump on and see if I can respond to these. All right, let's see. Thoughts on NSC giving Gary an extension through 2025. I'm going to get to that next, because that was sort of the next thing that sort of caused some ripples in the fan base. Then we've got any road trips planned. I've definitely got some circled. Nothing's locked into stone yet. It's always dependent on my work schedule, because my work schedule is in flux. So if I can make any road trips work, I definitely want to. I'm trying to put together. I've got a German friend who lives in Africa that's going to be visiting her family in Ohio this summer. and I'm hoping I can work it out because the dates are almost lined up to where I could go to the FC Cincinnati game, stay with her, have a fun like kind of long weekend deal there. My wife is going off state. I'm not going up and staying with some random German woman, but that's one I'm trying to make sure the dates can work out for. There's a few. The Atlanta date is one I'd love to do. I desperately want to go to Atlanta. I've wanted to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for a long time, just beyond going to see Nashville SC play there. But I've also wanted to go see like I've been for ever since we came to the league. I've wanted there to be us playing Atlanta in Atlanta the same weekend the Braves were in town. But every time we've gone to Atlanta, the Braves have been out of town. I love the Braves. I want to go see the Braves. I've somehow not been able to go to Truist Park yet. So I'd love to be able to kill two birds with one stone, go to a Nashville SC Atlanta United game, and also be there in a weekend where the Braves are playing. But they've just somehow the Braves are always out of town every time Nashville SC goes and plays Atlanta United. So I've got some definitely dates circled. I'm definitely going to do at least one. That's my commitment. I'll do at least one. I had so much fun last year on the Louisville, U.S. Open Cup away day. So I definitely want to do at least one, but it's going to come down to timing of the dates on that. So definitely going to try to do it an away day at some point in time. Middle Tennessee Pyro. This is one of the guys who's responsible for the pyrotechnics you see at the Titans games, that you see at the Nashville SC games, probably all kinds of other stuff I don't even know about. But he says, super stoked for tomorrow. We will have some nice pyro surprises compared to last season, at least up on the roof. I got to say, I don't know if you were involved in this, but the pyro at the She Believes Cup last Sunday was what I kind of thought we'd see a lot more of last year with Nashville SC. So I can definitely, from that, I'm definitely expecting there's going to be an upgrade in terms of like the just explosions and pyro and fireworks that we're going to get to see at the stadium. So pumped for that. MLS Adidas agreement got extended through the 2030 campaign. Wow, even longer than I thought. But I mean, if they keep up what they did this year and don't revert to like what they've done like the last 2 years, where it's like generic, every team looks the exact same jerseys, all pumped for that. If Adidas keeps rolling with what they did this year, pumped for that. We can keep going through 2030. Santa's Pub was packed after the national game last weekend. The crew went for a few beers. Cool place. Yeah, Santa's Pub is directly next to the stadium. It's one of those like hole in the wall, like famous places. For a long time, it was cash only. I think it might still be cash only, but it's like the ultimate like standard hole in the wall Nashville bar, like that we're famous for. And now it's like right next to Nashville. So you can't possibly hold all 30,000 people that'll be going to the game, but it's a great spot right next to the stadium for sure. John Hamilton, appreciate your insight. I'll be making the trip over for my first game ever at Geodis this year. Any suggestions on parking for a first timer that doesn't know the area? Um, I would the easiest thing you can do is just Google. I mean, like that seems like a really easy explanation, but truth be told, if you've ever been to any sporting event ever, there's always going to be businesses. There's always going to be um, you know, places that will sell parking on event days that aren't normally parking spots. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people like overlook when they complain about the parking situation at Geodis Park is that they think, oh, there's only 5,000 on-site parking, and sometimes that gets pulled and gets removed. But there's Nolensville Road. Just look along Nolensville Road. There is all kinds of businesses, especially like on the Saturday, Sunday games where they're not open on the weekends anyway. Tons of businesses down that little strip of Nolensville Road sell parking on game days, and it's a mile or less walk from there to the stadium. Um, the Metro Nashville Public Schools Board offices are just up the street from Geodis Park. I think early last season they weren't doing parking there, but throughout the second half of the season, I think they started selling parking there because I know I had a friend there that parked there 3 straight games there. And if you go into the neighborhoods nearby, like don't park in anybody's don't block mailboxes, don't block driveways, but there's free street parking all in the area around it, in the neighborhoods around it. And there's also a lot of houses that are selling parking in their driveway, selling parking in their yards, to make a little extra money. So there's lots of options in the area around. Like my first thing, if I was somebody who's not familiar with the area, look along Nolensville Road. There's a lot of businesses on Nolensville Road that when they're not open on the weekends will sell parking there. Um, and then the other one, the biggest lot nearby that, and I can't, like I said, I know they didn't sell it early in the season, but throughout I think the second half of the season, they were selling parking, was the Metro Nashville Public Schools board offices. They were selling parking in their lot there. And depending on what time you're coming, like I said, I think the parking garage is going to open at some point in time this season. Knock on wood, hopefully. Any new any new food options at the stadium? Yep, confirmed. Santa's Pub still cash only. All right. Any new food options at the stadium? Nothing I've heard of. I think in terms of like the local vendors, they're all going to be the same this season. I know I saw like Chivanadas, my favorite, the empanadas. They announced they're going to have a few new menu items at the stadium. Maybe some of like the non-branded uh, booths might change. Like there was like some like a gyro booth that wasn't like an actual like restaurant sponsored place. Some of that might be different this season, but I don't know for sure because I we went to the She Believes Cup. I sat in the club section, so unfortunately I didn't get to go sample like anything in the normal area. But I'll definitely be walking around the full stadium tomorrow, seeing if there's anything new. But the club hasn't announced any changes to the food offerings thus far. But there might have a little new kiosk, a change of one of the food booths here or there. But I expect it to still be kind of like a Rock and Dough Prince's, um, Shivanadas, uh, Daddy Dogs, Central Barbecue, the kind of standard ones that were like the local offerings. I think they'll all still be there, but we'll find out tomorrow because like they haven't announced anything, any changes, so we'll see tomorrow. Middleton C. Pyro does say there are a couple new options. Check the Nashville SC website. Yeah, so I don't know those, but yeah, go to the Nashville SC website. They've got a full like A to Z guide to Geodis Park. They'll have anything different, new, or updated listed. So check that there. All right, let's jump back into the season preview. Well, I'll jump back into the chat as we go, obviously, but so the parking, it is what it is. There are options. Could it be better? Obviously, yes. But is it the end of the world? Some of the people that are like acting like they're going to like cancel their season tickets and just going to never support the team anymore because the parking issues are just out of control. I do think some of the issue, and I sympathize with the supporters group from this, is that they keep getting thrown curveballs in terms of trying to plan their pregame tailgates. Because like they wanted to tailgate at the stadium where they can all be together and have a big group thing, and I can understand that because that's obviously an awesome thing you'd want to do. And when you're constantly trying to figure out what part of the stadium we're even going to be able to get into before the game, that's a little bit of a complication. So I sympathize with them, but I think that also is like something that people are getting. Some people from the supporters group, I think, are more upset that the tailgate is getting messed up than the parking is getting messed up because there's still places you could park it, you could walk to the tailgate, but if you don't know where the tailgate's going to be, that's obviously a complication. So as asked before, the other kind of thing that kind of set certain sections of the fan base into a tizzy this week was the announcement that Gary Smith's contract was extended through the 2025 season. To me, this is much ado about nothing. Like, as a Titans fan, and I tweeted this out, so if you follow me on Twitter, you already saw my thoughts on this. The Titans, in February of 2022, gave John Robinson, their general manager, a contract extension. They fired him in October of 2022. These contract extensions, they're going to, if you fire somebody after you've extended them, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but ultimately, the results on the field, the results are going to dictate what happens. I don't think Gary Smith getting this contract extension makes him any more secure in his position than he was, before he got the contract extension. If Nashville C goes off a cliff this season and is terrible, he's going to get fired. The contract extension will just be like, sucks, we gave him that contract extension. We have to like pay a little bit more of a buyout probably for him, but if he sucks, if things go wrong, he'll get fired. I mean, that's the nature of sports. I mean, like, you look at college football, like these coaches in college football are getting like extensions that are like signing them up through like 2035, 24. Like Nick Saban, I think, is signed for Alabama through 2050. And granted, I don't think anybody expects Nick Saban to ever get fired from Alabama, but coaches' contract extensions are kind of the biggest farce. It's nothing to worry about. Like, unless you're worried about your coach leaving, if your coach gets an extension, it's nothing to worry about because if he sucks, if things go wrong, he's still going to get fired. It doesn't matter. With Gary, and there's a lot of reasons. Like, there was definitely some people who were like, "Oh, this is weird timing. Like, why are you announcing this right before the season? Why not play the season out and then give him an extension?" And there's a lot of reasons you extend a coach and announce things when you announce things. Like, it could have been a misread by the team. Maybe they thought that like the negativity that came out of the parking situation, that if they announced an extension for Gary Smith, the fans would be like, "Oh, yay, Gary Smith got extended. Let's not worry about parking anymore." I don't know. There's also things where like if you've got kind of like a lame duck coach, which I don't think Gary Smith was going to fall into that category because he had I think he was previously signed through next season, so he had at least 2 years left on his contract before the extension. But sometimes it's meant to be a sign of good faith and a message to like the team. Like if the team thinks the coach is on their way out, what are we doing here? Why are we playing that hard? But if you give the coach an extension, extend their lifetime, the players know, oh, that guy's here, through a few more years. We got to keep going. And I don't know that that's the case. I don't know exactly why they timed the announcement when they timed it. Maybe there was negotiations going on that took a while to um, play out, and I think they wanted to hype some things up. I think they wanted some big news coming out the week leading up to this, big kickoff to the game. So I can kind of understand why they announced it there. They probably definitely underestimated how upset like members of the fan base were going to be about the parking announcement, and maybe should not have tied the Gary Smith contract extension announcement to that, because that definitely like was leading some people to spiral. Like people who are Gary out, who people don't want Gary Smith to be the coach, when they had the parking news on top of Gary Smith getting extended, who just lost their minds. And that was my whole thing, was like, listen, if you don't like Gary Smith, if you don't think he should be the Nashville SC's coach, if you don't think he should have got the contract extension, that's fine. But it's also nothing to worry about, because if he sucks, if the whole season falls apart, if it's a terrible season, he'll get fired. He's not going to survive a very bad season just because they extended his contract by 1 year. It's more of a, you've done a good job. We approve of what you've done so far, so here's a bonus year on your contract, but you still got to prove it. He's still got to go out and prove it this season. So ultimately, we'll see what happens this year. Like I said, like it's not that big of a deal to me for him to get a contract extension, because ultimately, if he's not good enough, if things go wrong this season, he's going to get fired. So there's nothing. That's the same as any coach in the world. Like there's very few coaches across the sports landscape that no matter how long their contract is, if they do a bad job, they won't get fired. Like maybe like Rick Stockstill at MTSU, who's just like, if I can win 5 to 6 games a year, I'll keep my job forever. But like, is he even still there? Yeah, he's still there. Yeah, but yeah, like the Gary extension, I'm not as staunch against Gary as I know a lot of people are, and I understand it from his perspective of why some people are against it, because it's like his style of play is not attractive. For the most part, it's can be boring, can be methodical, not fun to watch soccer at times. Although 2 years ago we were one of the top scoring teams in the league, and I don't know how much Gary's style of play can be blamed for the drop last season, as much as the fact that Teal Bunbury was hurt for the whole season and CJ Sapong just went off a cliff. But I understand that, like, if you don't like his style of play, I can understand why you'd be frustrated with him being the coach and why that keep. But I mean, we made the playoffs all 3 years in MLS. We've won 2 playoff games. So it's like there's some people who are like, oh, I guess if just making the playoffs is the standard. We haven't just made the playoffs. We've won 2 playoff games. We were an all-time bad kicks from the mark performance away from beating Philadelphia 2 years ago. It's not like we're just like sneaking into the playoffs and then just like getting embarrassed once we get there. Like, we've been competitive every year in the playoffs that we've been in the playoffs, and I don't know. I think the other thing that like I don't know if it's because like people aren't used to MLS, or they're more used to European soccer, where if the coach doesn't win a championship in 1 year, he gets fired automatically. I don't know what the deal is, but I mean, it's like the parity in the MLS is not leads to, there's not going to be a lot of teams that win the championship like repeatedly. Like Peter Vermees is one of the most respected coaches in MLS at at SKC, and when was the last time they won a championship? But I don't think SKC fans want Peter Vermees fired. Curtin is arguably the best coach in MLS right now, and Philadelphia hasn't won the championship yet. Nobody's calling for him to be fired. So it's like, Gary Smith is on a short list of people who have actually won an MLS Cup. Not at Nashville SC. He did it at Colorado, but he's done it. So, I mean, it's not like he's some schlub who has no track record of success in this league. So, I understand the frustration with his style of play. I'm glad that we have a fan base that really wants to see a team win a championship, isn't just happy to be there. But at the same time, I think some people need to like be a little bit more realistic about what MLS is. It's not a not a league where you're going to automatically like where you can guarantee success. It's the parity of MLS is almost one of the things that makes it a lot of fun. Like I have a friend that I did a YouTube video with talking about Nashville C. He's got a Twitter account. He's a British fan. He's a Leeds fan who is you know hugely into MLS, and one of the reasons he likes it so much, one of the reasons as a British fan that he got into MLS is because he loves the parody. He loves how like different the league is from every other league in the world, where there's not 2 to 3 teams that can win it. It's wide open. There's 2 to 3 teams every year that are probably talent wise ahead of the curve, but the structure of MLS opens it up to where almost any team can win it any season. I mean, Chicago Fire. Sorry, Chicago Fire fans, you're not going to win the cup this year, but it's much more wide open in MLS than it is any league in the world. So it's not like Europe where as soon as you falter, you fire the coach, you move on, and you try again or something like that, because it's long game. It's a long game. And I think that's why Nashville SC has tried to keep the roster consistent, try to keep consistent with Gary Smith because they feel like they're close, and to just throw the baby out with the bathwater because you didn't win a championship doesn't seem like a long-term build idea. So long and short, I don't necessarily think Gary Smith's the best coach in the world. I don't think he's the worst coach in the world. I think he's been pretty good for what Nashville SC needed, starting out as an expansion franchise. I don't know that he's a coach that can take us to the next level. He like I said, he's won an MLS Cup, so he's done it, but I don't know at this point if he's the guy that can do the next thing, but I'm willing to give him the chance to do it because he's won a cup. He's got us at three straight playoff appearances. He's won 2 playoff games here, and short of last year where our top 2 strikers couldn't score goals from May on, he's we've scored more than I think people think. I don't know. Once again, maybe people are just used to European soccer where it's just like there's a lot more scoring, but MLS is not that high scoring of a league. Sometimes you'll see like a crazy like 6-2 game or 4-3 game, but I think a lot of MLS games are like 1-1, 0-0, 2-1, and this is just like off the top of my head from watching it the last 3 years. Like, but I'm not Gary out, but I'm not also like going to be this huge Gary apologist. Like, oh, you don't understand, because I understand why his style of play can be frustrating to people and people wanting to win championships. I love that our fan base wants championships. That is awesome that we have already like come into the league and we're already like, let's go get it. Let's go get championships. Let's not just be happy to be here. That's great, but long and short story, the Gary contract extension didn't really affect me one way or the other. Like, because like I said, if he's bad this year, he'll get fired. If he's, good this year, move on. It doesn't really matter to me. So that's my Gary Smith take on the contract extension. Quick look at the things. Chats, we got a couple things come in. Richard Greenberg, looking forward to checking out the Apple TV game presentation. I am too. I think one of the things that's going to be very cool tomorrow with Nashville SC having the midday game. I'm hoping to be home in time for like at least the second half of the kind of night switch of games because I want to watch the MLS 360 deal, the kind of whip around show where they're going to bounce around the league and try to show as much highlights, as much of what's going on as possible. To me, like I've said this multiple times in videos over the 3 years in Nashville SC has been in the league. I feel like I've gotten really ingrained in Nashville SC. Like I know the team, I know, Gary Smith's style of play. I know the way the organization is trying to do things. At least I think I do. I'm just a fan. So, but from my reading of things, I think I do. But I still haven't fully like gripped the overall picture of MLS the way I have with like maybe the Premier League. I feel like I'm pretty like up to date on what's going on across the Premier League. I feel like the Titans, like I'm pretty up to date on what's going on around the NFL. But like MLS, I'm really in depth and really feel like I'm in tune with Nashville SC, but I haven't fully like integrated like into the rest of the league. Like I can't name a single player. Oh, actually, I was gonna say I can't name a single player on San Jose Earthquake, but I can name Cade Cal. So Cade Cal, boom, I know him. But Real Salt Lake, maybe Real Salt Lake's a good example. I don't know a single player on Real Salt Lake off the top of my head. I want to know players across the league. I want to know who's making moves, who's firing their coaches, who's got a good new coach, who's the contenders and stuff like that. Like I know little things here and there from listening to some podcasts and like following like certain reporters online, but like I really want to expand my depth of knowledge of the league as a whole. And I think Apple TV having the whole league under one umbrella is going to present a really, really cool opportunity to do that. So like I'm really hopeful Saturday after the Nashville SC game, I can get home and catch some of like the late parts of the evening games and the MLS 360 whip around show that Apple TV is going to do. So that's definitely one of the things I'm excited about. MLS structure is weird, not just in soccer, but professional sports in general, for good and for bad. Fun that it keeps teams on even playing fields, but we're forever need pro reg. That's from John Hamilton. Yeah, I think every soccer fan who's followed European soccer would love to see MLS find a way to do relegation, but you see it in European soccer now. The teams over there are trying to find ways to get rid of pro relegation because you lose so much money if your club gets relegated. And the billionaire owners that own these soccer teams over here do not want to be a part of that. Like, the old days of European soccer where it was club based, it was, your local club and, oh, they went up, oh, they went down, but the money that's involved now is these owners aren't wanting to let go of that. So unless there's like a double, unless MLS like ends up being like a 50 team league where there's basically just two MLSs and the pro relegation is not really even that significant. There's no way they're ever going to go to a structure that costs money. But I agree, it would be awesome. It's one of the best things about European soccer is, a promotion relegation system, and um, totally agree on that front. I did want to, before we go into the season, I think the one other kind of twofold thing that I'm really looking forward to in terms of this isn't really an off the field thing. It's an on the field thing, but it's not like a direct. I don't even know how to phrase it. One of the things I'm most excited about this season, and I was asked about road trips, and I'll tell you one road trip that, come hell or high water, I'm going to make this season. I'm going to go down and see the Huntsville team play because I think it's going to be so cool that for the first time ever, Nashville SC is going to have an essentially, reserve team, a U21 team, a U23 team, whatever you want to call it, that could potentially be funneling players to the main team. Like we haven't had that, a lot of clubs in MLS have had that for a while. Philadelphia's had theirs, Atlanta's had theirs. Most of the teams have, and I think the MLS has now kind of put it in place that every team has to field some form of reserve team, some form of secondary team. And I think it was a really smart move by Nashville SC to set theirs up in Huntsville to try to expand the footprint of the club, because, Atlanta United took up a big chunk of Southeastern soccer fans when they came in. Like I've known people that were, are from here in Nashville that are Atlanta United fans because they were Atlanta United fans first because Atlanta United came first. So to expand into a new market that's kind of in the same region where it's like what 2 hours, an hour and a half away from Nashville. So the fans down there can, if a player gets promoted from Huntsville up to the Nashville SC main team, Huntsville fans can be like, oh my God, that's our boy, let's go up there and see him play. That's an awesome step in the right direction, because I don't think Nashville could have sustained hosting the team here in Nashville. We're doing good to launch the team as it is, but I think it was very smart to put our secondary team in a nearby market rather than putting two teams in Nashville. So I'm really excited for that. I'm going to go down and see a game in Huntsville for sure at some point in time this season. Really excited to see how that plays out, how, the up and down, do guys get promoted up? Do guys get sent down? That's going to be really exciting to watch. And the other big one kind of tied to that is the connection between the academy. For the first time ever, and I wish I could remember this kid's name because I'm going to do him a disservice by not being able to remember his name. But we have a player in the academy that Gary Smith during preseason called out by name about how good he was looking, that they let him train and play in a few of the scrimmages with the first team during preseason. Gary Smith specifically said that he'll probably start getting games from Huntsville this season. So we're kind of getting closer to where maybe we're going to have some academy kids start to knock on the door of the first team, and that's super exciting. We don't have pro reg here in MLS, but I think clubs around the league, Philadelphia is a good example of this, FC Dallas is a good example of this, have done a really good job of following the academy system that they have in Europe, and following, now we've got the reserve system, maybe adding to that. So those are two things I'm very excited to see in the overall bigger picture of the club, how they enhance and elevate the club with having the reserve team and the potential of academy kids starting to maybe knock on the door of like making their way towards Huntsville or making their way even towards the Nashville SC first team. Very excited about that. This has reminded me there was one other kind of negative thing from the off season slash preseason I did want to address, and this is one where I just have no understanding of why they do things the way they do, and it's the closed door nature of preseason. Like all the preseason games are played behind closed doors. There was like a Nashville SC. I think the only preseason game they played here was like they played Louisville SC, and I think they also played one game against like some of the Huntsville squad here at Geodis Park. But it was all behind closed doors. It's all no streaming, no video. Only like the Twitter account is posting updates from those games, and I don't understand it. Like it's like I've defended the club a lot, obviously here today, but the preseason stuff makes no sense to me. Like somebody on Twitter a few weeks ago posted like what an epic like thing it would be like if for preseason you did like a Tennessee Cup where like Nashville SC played Chattanooga City, played Red Wolves, played One Knoxville, played um, Memphis 931, 901. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but like the kind of Nashville SC versus like the USL slash USL one teams, even the Huntsville team. Like just do like a preseason like battery of the teams that are like directly connected from being in the state together. Like you would definitely sell tickets to that. Fans would definitely want to go see that, and I don't understand why they're so secretive about the preseason. Like, what are we hiding? Like, this Gary Smith, we know Gary Smith's style play. There's no secrets he's coming up with behind closed doors. Like, I almost wonder if like they're more concerned that like they wouldn't sell tickets, so it's better to just make them not open to the public. Or it makes no sense to me. But even that, like, why wouldn't you at least stream the matches? Because I think like people would definitely want to see those matches. Like, even if they can't go to them, they'd watch the streaming of them. Like, and there's nothing I don't know, like maybe it's like I'm a Manchester United supporter, and like they go on these big, huge preseason tours to countries around the world where they sell out stadiums, and like they're just friendlies. They get the guys out there, they give them a few minutes to run around, get their legs right, get their maybe do a few tactical things to help them prepare for whatever the system things they want to work on is. But it's not like there's no reason to have behind closed doors. I mean, you have enough all your practices, all your training are behind closed doors. So if there's stuff you want to work on, there's stuff you want to develop that you don't want to show the world, there's plenty of opportunities to do that. But I mean, I feel like that's a huge missed opportunity to kind of build up the hype for the season, to like get fans more involved, give them the opportunities to be in the preseason. Even like I mentioned, I love going to Walt Disney World. If the team went down and did like a 2 week training period, a 2 week preseason in Orlando at like the Wide World of Sports at Disney World, I'd go down there and go to like 2-3 matches if they were going to go do something like that, and then I just like go to the parks and have a great time. But like for whatever, I don't understand the whole closed door nature of it. It's such a weird thing, and I think like by and large it's an MLS thing. Like it seems like a lot of teams do that, but then there are other teams that like don't. Like Miami, it was so weird. Inter Miami had this like great moment where they were like hosting this media event game where I think it was like two teams that were like a lot of media members that were going to play each other, and then like a week later, Inter Miami banned like certain media members from coming to their games. So that was weird. But I don't know, the whole like secrecy of preseason in Nashville SC and kind of MLS at large, I don't really fully understand it. Like I don't know what the deal is with that, and I think they're kind of missing the ball in that. But that's the last kind of gripe. That's the last kind of like thing that's kind of been agitating as we go up the season. Let's get to the actual season. We've been going for an hour already and haven't even talked about what the actual season is going to look like. So let's get into that. Let's go right into it. 2023 season kicks off tomorrow. Nashville SC versus NYCFC. NYFC, 2 years removed from being the champions of the league. They got that fancy little like this size banner that they hung up at Yankee Stadium, which I don't even think they're playing at Yankee Stadium now anymore. But from all indications, just looking at this game in general, it should be a win for Nashville SC because NYFC has basically stripped down the championship team, and a lot of the players that were the core of that are gone. The coach is gone. But it's a weird thing because like the home form from Nashville SC was such a bizarre thing last year. The fact that like opened this beautiful new stadium, this incredible atmosphere, and just like overall had kind of bad results last year at home. Like, is that going to continue this year? Because everything tells me Nashville SC should win this game tomorrow, but like the kind of weird vibe of the weird home results we got last year at Geo's Park has me like, is it going to happen? I don't know. But as I mentioned earlier, I think one of the issues with the team, one of the things that like kind of had fans on edge a little bit this offseason was that the team didn't really significantly change the roster. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because once again, it's the core of this roster has been together since they entered MLS, and they've had three straight playoff appearances, won playoff games in two out of those years. So in theory, like there's still, it's a good group. We've got the league MVP in Henny Mukhtar. We've got arguably the best defender in the league in Walker Zimmerman. Joe Willis, had a little dip last year, but he's, a year, 2 years removed from leading the league in clean sheets. We added U.S. men's national team player Shaq Moore, who, a little negativity around him coming off not the best performances in the World Cup. It's a good team. It's a good, solid squad. And I think maybe what hurts the team, what maybe concerns me more, like, I like our team, I like our squad. What concerns me more is that it seems like some of the teams that we're going to be in direct competition with made big steps forward. Like, reading through some season previews, listening to some podcasts. Orlando, a lot of people think they've made a big leap forward. Cincinnati seems to be a team that, like, a lot of people are like actually picking Cincinnati as like a dark horse contender to win the league, which is wild. But I mean, look at that. Toronto, look at the second half of Toronto when they brought in the Italian reinforcements last year compared to like what they were at the start of the year. They're going to be much better. I think that's the one concern to me. Like, I like our squad, I like our team, but it feels like a lot of the teams around us improved, and we kind of just were content to hold the fort. Now, we added Fafa Picault, like a veteran player, total fits the mold of like the Gary Smith, Mike Jacobs of like an MLS veteran who knows the league, knows how to play, knows how to be successful in the league. And if there's one thing I really like about the addition of him, is that it adds an element to the starting lineup if it's him, but it also kind of ticks down who sort of that next wave of players is going to come onto the pitch if we need an extra player to come on late in the game. So if it's like Leal on one side, Fafa on one side, Mukhtar Sapong up top, Davis and we'll say Godoy or McCarty in midfield, we're trailing the game late. If now Jacob Shuffleboard is the player we're bringing off the bench late in the game when we're chasing a goal, that's a lot better of an option than bringing, love him to death, but that's a lot better of an option than bringing Alex Muil off the bench. That's certainly a lot better of an option than bringing Luke Hackinson off the bench. Like, Jacob Shuffleboard, with his pace, with his direct attacking play, coming off the bench against like fatigued defenders, that's a pretty nice proposition. That's something that I definitely think is going to be very interesting. That definitely could give us a little bit more of a dynamic than what we maybe had when like our plan B was Luke Hawkinson last year. So I like that. Obviously, a secondary goal scoring threat to Hani Mukhtar is the big thing that we need. That's the big thing everybody kind of wanted us to address in the offseason that we haven't addressed. Tim Sullivan from Club Country USA has, and he's pretty on top of these things. Like, he's been pretty well informed, pretty in the know about these things, has all but said he believes there's a move coming in the summer for that type of player. That he, seems pretty confident that the Loba deal was made with the intention that he was going to be purchased, that it was just a temporary loan, that the purchase deal was going to happen, and it was going to open up a DP spot, and we would execute that in the summer. He's been pretty accurate in his, reporting and his coverage and his, stuff like that. So the fact that he's saying that gives me hope that that's something that's going to happen. But man, if we wait till summer to make that move, so much can go wrong because, like I mentioned Toronto a second ago, like they were basically out of the playoffs. And then when they got their two little Italian reinforcements that came in the summer, looked like a completely different team, but it was like too little, too late. We brought Ake Loba in the summer, and he never was able to find his footing. Like there was reports like he came in out of shape and didn't have his fitness, and it almost seemed like never seemed to me like he didn't have the talent, that he wasn't a good enough player. But it seemed like he immediately got into Gary Smith's doghouse and was just never going to be able to get out of it. Yonder Cadiz, the other DP striker we had previously, came in the summer and his first season he never really hit the ground running. Second season he looked a little bit better, but never fully justified being a designated player in his regard either. So Shaq Moore, he came in last summer and he pretty much hit the ground running. He came in, got things going, looked pretty good for us right out of the gate. So it, waiting until summer, unless they just have the move lined up, unless they know exactly what they're doing. And Mike Jacobs seems like he's kind of had those type of moves in his back pocket in the past. Like Ake Loba was one where they wanted to make that move in January but couldn't quite pull it off, so they held off to summer. Shaq Moore was rumored like that was one we were going to try to do last January but couldn't pull it off and had to wait till summer. So that's kind of been his MO, is to if he can get the deals done in January, he will, but if he has to wait till summer, he'll wait till summer. I would be a little worried that if anything goes wrong, if Haney gets hurt, if Walker gets hurt, if really we're very thin. Like we've got a very solid 13 to 14 players, but like 1, 2 injuries could completely derail the season. And then if we're like waiting until June, July to bring in reinforcements, we could be out of the mix by then. Although another gripe, here we go. The expanded, modified, new MLS playoff structure, which is so stupid, where 9 teams from each conference are going to make the playoffs, is ridiculous. So it's almost like you have to be very bad to not make the playoffs this season in MLS. And so I would expect Nashville SC will make the playoffs, because I don't expect they'll be very bad. Like they might have a big dip in form if Haney can't keep scoring, if he gets hurt, if any other significant players get hurt. They could have a drop off, but they're not going to drop off, knock on wood, to a very low level the way some other teams might. I expect them to make the playoffs. I expect if things go well, if they play the way they're capable of playing, they'll be a top half team in the Eastern Conference. But injuries or just dips in form can significantly derail this. One thing that has frustrated me with some of the media coverage of the team has been that there's people who've said like, oh, well, CJ Sapong is not going to have the same kind of year he had last year. Teal Bunbury is not going to have the same kind of year he had last year. And I don't know why people think that, because they're both on, over 30. And typically once players over 30 start to drop off, they don't magically like pop back up. They don't magically like suddenly turn out to be like stunningly good again. Once they start to regress, they just keep regressing. I hope that's not the case. I would love it if CJ Sapong got back to like his form of 2 years ago, where he adds, 8 to 10 goals to the team. I'd love for Teal Bunbury to be healthy, because when he was healthy last year, he looked like a player who could be a important impact player for the team. Like I think he played like, this is an exaggeration, I think he played like 3 games and had 5 goals. But like, when he played, he was impactful, but he just couldn't stay healthy all last year. And unfortunately, like, as somebody who's well over 30 at this point in time, once you go past 30, you're not coming back. You're not sending, like, there's only one Tom Brady. There's not many people that have like arguably gotten better after they started moving past 30 in professional sports. So this idea that, well, CJ and Teal can't possibly be as bad as they were last year. Yes, they can. They can actually probably be worse, because they're only getting older. That's a concern for me. If there's any concern for me in the team, obviously injuries, but I mean every team in the world, if they get injuries. Like MLS, one of the issues with their salary cap that I've seen multiple people talk about over the years is that it hurts the ability for teams to build real depth. So, I mean, there's not many teams in MLS that, if they get an injury, won't be kind of screwed. So it's not like a unique thing to Nashville SC that a significant injury could screw us. That's, kind of across the board in MLS. But the idea that outside of Henny Mukhtar, we're still going to be relying on 2 30-plus-year-old strikers who showed major regression last year, and we're just going to hope that they revert. away from the regression is not awe-inspiring for me. But, I think the defense is going to be solid. Jack Marr is going to be solid. I'm excited to see him step in into a more prominent role. Shaq Moore for a full season should be great. Dan Lovitz is always going to be solid. Zimmerman is Zimmerman. Our kind of main three midfielders, Dax, Davis, and Godoy are all solid, but Godoy was having trouble staying healthy last year. Brian Anuga's a solid option as a depth player, but hasn't been able to consistently look like a player who could play regularly. We got tons of depth on the wing, though. Like, one thing that a lot of people have been talking about, and I don't know that this will happen just because Gary is very rigid in the way he does things, but he's even kind of referred to it a little bit, is maybe does Randall Leal, with the new depth we've added on the wings, with Fafa coming in, with Schaffelberg coming in, with Mule still being there, with Hawkinson still being in there, do we play Leal a little more inside? Like, he's played as an 8 and as a 10. An 8 more for Costa Rica. He's played as a 10 a few times for us. Is that becoming more of a thing this year with now the new players we've added in the wide areas? That'll be interesting to see if that becomes a thing. I really am excited to see what the lineup's going to be tomorrow. Is it going to be, exactly what we think it is, or does Gary have some tricks up his sleeve? It's going to be really interesting to see. But like I said, I mean, the roster we have, it's by and large been the same team we've had for 3 years. I wasn't crazy about Dave Romney leaving, but they're ready for Jack Marr to be like the starting center back alongside Walker. We added a guy, Nick DePay, who's supposed to like be, essentially able to be the third center back, but he's hurt right now. He's got a calf injury, so he's out for the first game. So don't know when he's actually going to be able to come into the team and provide that level of depth he's supposed to provide. But I mean, it's a team that's it's essentially the same squad that's made the playoffs all 3 years we've been in the league. So I would expect, especially with the expanded playoffs, we'll be in the playoffs again. I think if everything goes well, especially if we were able to get like a significant signing in the summer, and we haven't completely gone off a cliff before that point in time, we could even knock on the door of being like top 4. I can't see us catching Philadelphia. A lot of people are really excited about Orlando and Cincinnati, but I don't know, because I don't really know how to judge the moves they've made, but I don't see any reason that we should not be in the playoffs again. I don't see any reason that if, Hanny keeps up his form, if we can get even anything out of CJ and TL at all. Because, I mean, like, Sapong didn't score from May to the end of the season, right? Like, that's insane for your starting striker to June, July, August, September, October. Like, almost 6 months without scoring a goal for your number one striker is insane. Like, so I guess if people are expecting him to have a bounce back, if he just scores one goal, that's a bounce back. That's progress. So we have a chance to knock on the door of being in the upper half of the Eastern Conference, but I see us more in the 5 to 8 range, unfortunately. I'd love for us to like bounce back to where we were 2 years ago and be like knocking on the door of 1, 2, 3, those spots, but it just feels like until we see if there's another move coming in the summer, this is like a mid to low upper table team. So 5, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range is where I probably see us ending up the season, which, that doesn't do much for the contention that thinks we're only playing to get into the playoffs, and understandably so. But it's going to be a fun season, no matter what. Like, the games at GS Park have been awesome since day one. Love this team, love supporting them, love going to see them play. I'm excited that we have not really blown the team up. I think it's been really important for building the fan base, for building the support, is that it's the consistency we've had in the roster. It's worked on the field, but I think it's been as important for building, the culture around the fan base. Because, like, one of the things, like, I tried to get into the MLS for years before Nashville SC got a team, because I wanted to support, the American League, obviously, but, like, it seemed like there was such inconsistency and so much roster turnover in the MLS. Like, I was tried to be like a Columbus Crew fan because I went to a Columbus Crew game. I went to the multiple of the U.S. Mexico games up in Columbus. So like I kind of tried to adopt them as my MLS team, but it felt like they had like 15 new players every year, and it was just hard to keep up with not only who was on your team but who was on every other team. And so like I think it's been important that it may not help them in terms of pushing forward to win a championship. But I think keeping the core together, keeping the basic squad together, has been important for building the culture, building the Nashville SC fan base. And this is, I would be shocked if this is not probably the last year that a large chunk of this core is together. Like, it's hard to see Dax McCarthy doing another year. Godoy isn't getting any younger. Sapong, Teal, don't see them being here beyond this year. Even like a Joe Willis, Dan Lovitz. I don't know how much longer. There's these guys that have been important parts of the core that I kind of am thinking like, and that's kind of I think another reason why fans are frustrated that there wasn't more investment to enhance this squad, because this kind of for this initial core original Nashville SC group, it almost feels like this season kind of might be the last hurrah. But it's a good squad. It's a good team. I think they'll have a good season still. There's no reason outside of injuries or unforeseen major regressions from key players that it would go off a cliff. But you never know. That's the beauty of sports. That's the beauty of a league like the MLS that is built for parity. Is you can feel good about your team today, a day before the kickoff, and 2 months from now, I might be on here just like burning the club to the ground and calling for, you know, Mike Jacobs in Ian Ayer's head. Oh, I did want to say one thing. That reminded me, Ian Ayer saying his name. If you are a person who generally is upset about any of the issues and how the club is being run, Ian Ayer is not hard to find. He is somewhere out on Broadway literally every single night. And he's also out and about mingling at all the Nashville SC events. I saw him and talked to him at the jersey release party last week. Do you want to run up to him and be like, hey man, I'm so mad about parking? Not necessarily, but he's out there. You can find him. You can talk to Ian Ayer. If you have frustrations, I know there's been like members of the supporters group that wish they were given more access, given more opportunities to converse with the club. Ian Ayer is out on Broadway every single night. You can find Ian Ayer. You can talk to Ian Ayer. Let's see here. A few comments have come in that I'll answer, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. Doesn't the Titans allow season ticket members to attend training sessions? That would be a good idea for NSC, depending on their facility. It's been a little bit more restrictive post COVID with the Titans. Pre COVID, like they were pretty much like open sessions. You could go anytime. I think this season was the first year they opened it back up to fans, but it was very limited. You had to, they sent out an email to like season ticket holders, and you had to reserve your spot, and they went very quickly. Um, and I think, I don't know that this will ever, that'll necessarily be something SC does, but they're building their new full-on training and academy facility in Antioch. So once that opens, that might be something that opens the door to them doing more things like that. Because right now they do all their training, everything at Curry Ingram Academy. I've been out there. I've actually refed a few academy games out there. It's a beautiful facility. It's a beautiful school, but it's not their site. They don't own it. They don't control. I guess they do own it because it's John Ingram owns the school, so it's his site, but it's not exactly the conducive. It's not the place you'd want to necessarily like open up for tours and stuff like that and for open training, because it's not really a big like professional facility that you'd want to show off type thing. So when the new facilities are open in Antioch, maybe that's something they open the door to, and let people come in. Although like the Titans don't necessarily let like people come in and tour their practice facilities. They do, like I said, they do open stuff in training camp. So maybe once the new facilities are open, maybe Nashville SC will like open some stuff up to that. But I think that won't come until the new Antioch facility is open. Because of the League Cup tournament, lots of early games you can't afford to lose. That is something I completely forgot to talk about. I'm very excited for the League's Cup tournament. It's going to be a very interesting thing to see how that works out. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's essentially going to be almost like a mini club World Cup for Liga MX and MLS. August, both leagues are going to put their seasons on hold and do a World Cup like style tournament that will take up the whole month of August. We have two group stage matches here that are going to be in Nashville for that tournament. So it's going to be really cool because like I'm excited about that. I think that's only going to help MLS playing against better competition and stuff like that, getting on a bigger stage, kind of showcasing yourself around. I was really excited last year that Nashville SC got the chance to host like kind of like a exhibition preliminary kind of showcase match of that when Club America came here last year. But Richard's point was because of that, lots of early games you can't afford to lose. And now that you mention that, I almost think that might be that tournament might come at the exact right time for a team like Nashville SC, where I'd have to look at like the overall schedule, the overall structure of the schedule, be able to fully look at it. But like you think about a team like so we for the first time ever we saw something similar to what League Cup's going to be happen with European soccer with the World Cup being in the winter this year. And I look at a team, Manchester United, that's my team in England. Manchester United pre World Cup versus Manchester United post World Cup, night and day. Unbelievable, like what Ten Hag has been able to do to elevate the team since returning from the World Cup. Could we see some of that happen with teams in MLS coming out of Leagues Cup? Because if Nashville SC is going to make a summer move, we sign a player in, let's say, mid July. One of the issues with Ake Loba was he came in out of shape, he wasn't ready. But the other problem was CJ Sapong was in like the form of his life, so he wasn't gonna like give up his spot to Ake Loba just because Ake Loba was a big signing coming in. If we make a big signing in July, and let's say Teal or CJ's been in good form, then we go to the League's Cup because that's a little bit more of an exhibition. I could see Gary being a lot more willing to use that tournament to uh, bring in a new player to put them into the team to drop CJ, to drop Teal, even if they're in form, than he was when all the games were league games. So that's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective. It puts a lot of emphasis on getting a good start to the season, but at the same time, where it falls in the calendar compared to if Nashville SC makes a move somewhere prior to that, it could open up the door for kind of a mini reset to where if we've been solid, if we've been okay, if we're just in the right spot, bring in a new player, take a break, have that little tournament to maybe bred that player in, and maybe like reset and come out on fire. Because I mean, I've seen that happen with Manchester United. It's been incredible. Like completely different team post World Cup from what it was pre World Cup. So it'll be interesting. I totally forgot to mention that. That's a huge thing I'm looking forward to the season. Is the League's Cup and just like how it impacts the season, how it impacts the teams, and just seeing Liga MX and MLS go head to head in like a big way like that. That's gonna be very exciting. How happy are you? We're back in the Eastern Conference. Still have zero ideas why we ever left. The closest opponent was Kansas City. 100%, happy. I mean, obviously, it makes more sense for us to be in the Eastern Conference. MLS. You don't have the same level of like regional rivalries you have in like England, where like everybody's like only an hour apart. But for us to be regularly playing Atlanta, regularly playing Cincinnati, um, even Orlando, Columbus, that makes so much more sense just from a regional perspective. Um, I think we kind of got the shaft on getting shifted to the Western Conference because they wanted to keep the league more balanced. And because we were the newest team, it was the easiest to move us to the Western Conference last year as opposed to like maybe a Chicago or somebody like that who maybe would technically have been slightly further west even. Um, and now St. Louis came in, so that gave the Western Conference an extra team that allowed us to revert back to the East. And if you look at who the main teams are that are in contention for the next 30th spot for expansion, it's all West Coast teams. So essentially, the West is now going to be balanced. They don't need an extra team over there. We were able to move back to the East where we're supposed to be. It sucked. It was, dumb from a regional perspective, but I can see why the league did it. Don't think, I mean, because they didn't want to have a situation. Last year we had 28 teams. So if we'd been in the if we'd been in the East last year, there would have been 15 teams in the East and 13 teams in the West. And I can understand why they didn't want that imbalance, but it still sucked for us. So definitely pumped to be back in the East, especially for the potential opportunity to like I said, go to more road games because like we had a few. Like I think we had a Cincinnati game, I think we had an Atlanta game, but there's so much more now that we can go to this year. It's gonna be so much better, and for the long run too, for building those rivalries because I think that's gonna be the most exciting thing for us is like to really be able to consistently build those rivalries with our more natural regional rivals like Atlanta, Cincinnati, Columbus, Orlando. That's going to be better for us in the long run than like playing LA and San Jose. Let's see here. What else we got here before we wrap up? Aiden says hello. Hello, Aiden. I think Richard says I think teams leading MLS, good teams will bow out early to avoid injuries. Therefore, San Jose will win it? Question mark. The league talking about the League Cup. Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting thing because that's the one thing we haven't really ever seen in MLS. Over in Europe, you see the FA Cup, you see the League Cup, you see the Copa del Rey, you see, Europa League versus Champions League. You see the teams where they have these alternative competitions outside of their leagues, and teams take them seriously to varying degrees. So it'll be very interesting to see, how MLS teams approach the League's Cup. Do they go for it? Does having it be condensed to a month where you're not having to fit it in between league games make teams be more competitive for it, or do teams who are maybe in like good position just say let's take this month and be a recovery month and play like younger players? We've seen a little bit of it with the CONCACAF Champions League where teams either just threw in the towel in the CONCACAF Champions League to make sure they stayed in contention in MLS, or last year Seattle went all in on the CONCACAF Champions League and basically like forfeited like the first half of their MLS season to make sure they won the CONCACAF Champions League. So I think the fact that the league is taking a break for the tournament, I would expect that means that teams will take it seriously and be more competitive in it just because it's not like they're having to fit the games in like midweek between league games. But at the same time, if like we go into the Nashville SC, for example, if they go into the tournament, Haney Mukhtar's nursing like a hamstring injury, Zimmerman's got an ankle thing that he's been playing through. Do we play them in that cup tournament, or do we give them a month off to recover and come back full strength when the league resumes? And that's going to be very interesting. That's going to be one of the things that's going to be very fun to see about the League's Cup, what it ultimately impacts, how it ultimately affects the overall, flow and nature of the season. How seriously do MLS teams take it? I think like a lot of, most people seem to think that it's going to be kind of a wash for Liga MX. Like all the predictions I've seen of people that are picking who's going to win that are all picking mostly Liga MX teams. I've seen a few people pick like Seattle. I think maybe that's because Seattle went so hard for the CONCACAF Champions League that they could see them being the type of team that would want to go get that now. But I don't know. I mean, I don't watch enough Liga MX to fully know, but I feel like the gap that existed between Liga MX and MLS for a long time is not as wide as it once was. So it's going to be very interesting because we'll see. That'll be another thing we'll see firsthand in that tournament is 100% what's the gap between the leagues. Is Liga MX still quite a bit ahead, or is it a little bit more balanced? It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun MLS season. It's going to be a fun Leagues Cup. It's going to be fun U.S. Open Cup. I see a lot of people predicting Nashville SC to win the U.S. Open Cup, and I don't know if that's because, like I said, Gary Neville kind of sets up his teams to be able to win those type of games where if like where you don't have to score to win, or if people are just optimistic that we're going to get a trophy. I don't know, but it's going to be a fun season. I'm so glad we're finally getting to play soccer, so we don't have to dwell on the roster build and dwell on the parking and dwell on the jersey cost. I'm ready to see real live Nashville SC soccer on the field tomorrow at Geodis Park. The Man in Black game. We're going to be blacking out the stadium. It's going to be freaking awesome. I will be there. There will be a game day vlog from the game. Let's go FC Dallas. I got to say, man, FC Dallas, like the number of players that they've put into like big time positions around the world is incredible. Like I don't know why they don't retain more of those players. I'm sure as a FC Dallas fan you'd like that too, but like FC Dallas, Philadelphia, those are the two teams when I look at like what the academy system should be in MLS. Those are the two teams I'll say. Thanks for the stream, Mad. Come on, you boys in black. Yes, sir. Come on, you boys in black. We'll be there live tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel with the bell turned on for notifications so when the game day vlog goes live, you will get notified so you can check it out. And if I do any other future live streams, which I'm sure I'll do throughout the season, you'll get those as well. Man, hour and a half. This one went way longer than I wanted it to go, but when I get to talking about Nashville SC, there's not much that can stop me. Love this team. Love this club. Can't wait for the game tomorrow. Thanks for watching. If you're seeing me there, if you're somebody who's going to the game, if you see me there, don't hesitate to say, hey, love meeting new fans, love meeting fans of the club, love being a part of that culture. Come on, you boys in black. Come on, you boys in gold.